Victus. Thanks for watching Beyond the Shadows podcast. I just want to take a second to ask if you would be so kind to hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment down below. Follow us, whatever you need to do. Because we have no ads, we have no sponsors, we have zero budget. Everything I do sitting here at this desk, and I do it by myself. So if you could take the time out of your day and hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, it would help us out tremendously. It helps keep this podcast ad-free, in fact. But you didn't know that. And if you have your own story that you want to tell, you can even reach out to us. Yeah, it's true. You can reach out to us. Our email is beyondshadowspodcast@gmail.com, or you could scan this QR code right here. Yeah, how simple is that? The QR code takes you everywhere you need to go that pertains to Beyond the Shadows podcast. So hit that like, hit that subscribe, drop a comment down below, and if you've got a story you want to hear, or you have a personal story that's something that's happened to you, email us at beyondshadowspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you everyone for listening. You all are so amazing. Let's get this back on the road. Sorry to take up your time.
A creature like that, how would it ever die?
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs.
Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him.
Oh, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. Horrible. Looked like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.
Beyond the shadows. What if your computer started talking back to you? Not with error codes or glitches, but with messages from centuries long past. In the quiet village of Dodleston, a simple BBC microcomputer became the stage for one of the strangest tales of the paranormal age. Words appeared on screen claimed to come from a man who lived 400 years earlier. Was it a haunting, a hoax, or something stranger? Tonight on Beyond Shadows podcast, we dig into the case known as the Dodleston Messages.
Well, welcome in everybody. Welcome in. How's it going? My mic's a little hot. Wow. Sorry about that. Hello and welcome. This is season 2, episode, hold on, 34. Yeesh, we're closing in on the end of the season. It's getting there. It's getting close. It's getting close. I hope y'all are ready. But yes, welcome in everybody. Tonight we're covering the Dodleston Messages, the Ghost in the Machine. We decided to kind of stick with something a little more along the lines of high strangeness this week. And this case really hits the nail on the head. It's as straightforward as it gets. It's a case that I heard about many years ago, heard it on another podcast, and totally forgot about it until I was doing research for this week's episode, when I realized that we had never even breached the subject. So I said, well, this is great. This is perfect. Let's go ahead and do it. So thank you for being here tonight. We've got a few tiny small announcements before we get started. We have new subscribers in the YouTube channel. Thank you, MultiTroy63, for your subscription on YouTube. You are amazing. You're awesome. Thank you for everything that you've done for this show. Let's see. We also have we've got news and paranormal this week. We've got some new stuff. We've got some updates on the Annabelle case, which is interesting, to say the least. I hope y'all are ready for that. But before we get going with this week's news and paranormal, we have a news jingle. I finally got a jingle. for the weeks in this week's in paranormal news. Are you guys ready? Because I spent some time getting this together. I hope it's good. I hope it's not too loud. I played with the audio levels a little bit. Let's see how this sounds. You ready? This week in paranormal news. The Conjuring House goes up for auction. The infamous Rhode Island farmhouse that inspired The Conjuring has been scheduled for foreclosure auction on October 31st of all days. This 8.5-acre property, which was last sold in 2022 for $1.525 million, has attracted paranormal investigators for years due to its long history of rumored hauntings. Cause of death revealed for investigator touring with the Annabelle doll after his sudden death in July of 2025. The coroner for paranormal investigator Dan Rivera, confirmed this week that he died of cardiac-related natural causes. At the time of his passing, Rivera was touring with the possessed Annabelle doll, which fueled online rumors about paranormal connections to his death. Following the news, Rivera's colleagues announced that they will finish the tour in his honor. Taking over to Scotland now, the third Loch Ness Monster sighting recorded in 2025. An unnamed witness in Loch End, Scotland, reported a, quote, strange submerged anomaly in the water that caused an unusual disturbance pattern. This marks the third official sighting of the legendary cryptid this year, following earlier reports in May and March. The Conjuring Last Rites premieres the final installment of the Conjuring film series based on real-life paranormal experiences of the Smurl family. Premiered this weekend. News outlets have revisited the true story behind the haunting that inspired the movie. In ongoing paranormal news, intriguing but debunked interstellar object, the controversial non-peer-reviewed research paper suggests the interstellar object, 3I Atlas, might be alien technology, received attention this week. However, experts widely consider the paper's claims to be without merit. And upcoming supernatural series, a new paranormal investigation, Haunted, the Heartlight Paranormal Files, is scheduled to premiere in August of 2025. Wait. It's September. Where are they at? And Paranormal News Podcast, the podcast Darkness Radio, recently covered a range of paranormal headlines, including the death of Dan Rivera and Area 41 employees, allegedly being targeted by an invisible enemy. So shout out to you guys, the podcast Darkness Radio. Keep it up. You guys are great. You made it in my newsfeed. You're awesome. And that is our week's news in paranormal. I hope everything sounds good. I hope that this music isn't too loud. So thank you for being here tonight. That's your week in paranormal news. I love the beginning of it. The da 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 da. Yeah, it's very riveting. I love it. It really drives home the news. The news. And thank you to all the traction this week on Spotify and on YouTube. We dropped a whole bunch of reels on Facebook and on YouTube this week, and lots of people loving it. We're getting good reactions. Thank you to everybody that reacted and liked and commented. I appreciate it. No emails, no incoming suggestions for episodes, so we're just going to keep doing what we do best. But before we go any further, I have a question. It's not quite what you might think. But, this is something that needs to be said. And it's serious. What shirt are you wearing today? What shirt am I wearing today? Indeed, we've got something new. The shirt rotation pile has officially turned over, and we're back to where we started in season 1. But I did buy 3 new shirts this week just for the show, and I grace you with this masterpiece. Classically trained. Yes, yes, yes. This is important to me because, yes, I am classically trained when it comes to video games. If you haven't noticed, in the background behind me, all of my old video game consoles. We've got everything from Atari 2600 up to PS4. No, PSVR is the newest system. I kind of dropped off the console wagon, but I mean everything. Like look, we got Sega Dreamcast, Super Nintendo, PS1. Oh no, this one is a traditional NES. Super Nintendo's over here. Everything, all my consoles. I saved them all. I am a hoarder when it comes to my gaming consoles. So I am proud of my gaming heritage. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very proud indeed. I'm a little rolly today. Why am I rolling so much? So, oh my gosh, right out of the gate. Haven't even started the script and I said the S word. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's one down already. I don't deal well with people out in public. And I went and did some shopping today with my wife. And as soon as I got home, cracked a beer. And that was my first one. So I started it a little early today. Hate me if you want. It's fine. It's what I do. It's what I freaking do. We have a doozy. So like I said, we've, or I have at least done some preliminary research in this like a year or two ago. Crazy little investigation we've got tonight. It's kind of, I guess you could say high strangeness is what we're looking at today. A very, very unique story, and I don't think we've had another one like this since or before. So I feel like this is very important to say, or to talk about this evening. I think we're gonna have some fun. Hold on, let me feel like I'm forcing myself to sit up a little more. So this is a really unique case, but I think we're going to enjoy this. It's really, really unique. And if you're curious about what's going to happen, you just get to stick around and see what's going on. So if you're still here, thank you. We're going to get into it. We are going to get into it. We don't have any other announcements, so we're gonna roll on. We're gonna roll on forward. Let's set some ambience here. Our favorite. Let's go with our favorite. Yeah. Our go-to here. Yes. Yes. So we also have a new voice filter this week. The old-timey radio voice. We'll use that throughout the episode. So get ready for that. Well, let's dive into this. Season 2, Episode 34, Beyond the Shadows podcast. This is Dodleston, Ghost in the Machine. In a quiet village of Dodleston, England, Ken Webster powered on his BBC Microcomputer and noticed something strange. A block of text appeared on screen. Not an error code, not a corrupted file, but a message written in archaic English. The author called himself Thomas Harden. He claimed to live in the year 1541. His words described a presence in his home. Voices, visions, disruptions, things he couldn't explain. From his perspective, Ken was the ghost. The message continued. Paragraphs would blink into existence, sometimes overnight. There was no internet connection, no modem, nothing but the machine and a growing sense that something or someone was reaching through it. Before long, another voice emerged. This one didn't pretend to be from the past. It claimed to observe everything from a distant point in the future. The entity identified itself only as 2109. It warned Ken and his friends not to interfere. It spoke of timelines, consequences, and watchers. And it left behind no trace. What started as an alleged haunting became a time-bending enigma involving the past, the future, and something in between. To this day, no one has been able to prove it was a hoax or confirm it was real. This is Dodleston, Ghost in the Machine. Let's get started on Act 1, everybody. Act 1. Dodleston, a sleepy village in Cheshire, England, isn't the sort of place you'd expect to find portal between timelines. No ancient monoliths, no military bases buried under farmland. Just narrow roads, old brick houses, and the occasional confused cow. In 1984, a man named Ken Webster moved into one of these houses, a modest 18th century cottage, with his girlfriend Debbie and their cat. Of course, can't leave out the cat. The home, like many British structures, had character. Low ceilings, creaky floorboards, and a layout that didn't quite make sense. You know, the kind of place where you open one door expecting a pantry and find the remnants of someone else's life. They moved in to renovate the place. Nothing major, just a little elbow grease and some new paint, but while they worked, something strange began happening. Furniture moved on its own. Stackable cans appeared in bizarre formations. Footprints showed up in dust where no one had walked. At first, they brushed it off. Maybe it was the cat getting into things. Maybe they were just tired and imagining things. Or maybe, as Ken would later joke, the ghost really hated our interior and decorating style. Yeah, there you go. Dad joke for you. But it didn't stop. But first, let's back it up a little bit. Let's talk about Ken Webster, the guy who owns the house. Ken wasn't your average paranormal magnate. He was a school teacher, a pragmatist, and someone who didn't exactly believe in ghosts. He wasn't chasing fame or channeling spirits in candlelight circles. He was just trying to get through the school year and fix up his damn house. But Ken had something most people didn't in 1984. Access to a BBC Microcomputer. This little machine was the British equivalent of the Apple II. Primitive by today's standards, but for the time it was cutting edge. Text-based programs, no internet, no Wi-Fi, no email, just basic memory storage and a kind of processing power that could lose a chess game to a potato. But Ken didn't use the micro for much. More typing and saving documents for school. But that was enough to make his cottage just a little more interactive. So one afternoon, while checking his files on the BBC Micro, Ken noticed something odd. A file he didn't remember creating was saved onto the system, and when he opened it, what he found was chilling. The message read, "True are the nightmares of a person that fears. Safe are the bodies of the silent world. Turn, pretty flower, turn towards the sun. For you shall grow and sow, but the flower reaches too high and withers in the burning light." The text was written in a mixture of modern English and something older, a stylized form resembling Tudor-era dialect. It didn't read like a prank. It didn't feel like a virus. The micro couldn't even run background processes like that. Ken had no explanation. He assumed it was a mistake, a corrupted file, a prank. Maybe one of his students had gotten creative during a visit. But the messages kept coming. The next message was more direct, and this time the sender introduced himself. "My name is Lucas. I write on behalf of many. What strange words you speak. You are a worthy man who has a fanciful woman and a fine cat." Ken stared at the screen. Whoever was writing this knew intimate details about his life, about Debbie, about the cat, about their routines. The name would later change. The entity would be calling himself Thomas Harden, and a man living in the 16th century. And what he described as a leasehold on the very land where Ken's cottage stood. He said he had been hearing things. He had seen strange lights. He believed that he was being haunted. This wasn't a ghost story. This was two people, separated by over 400 years, each convinced that the other was the intruder. The early messages were poetic rambling and often confused, but they weren't meaningless. As Ken and his friends began responding, yes, they wrote back. And the back and forth became more structured. They asked questions about the past. Thomas would respond often using period-appropriate details. His spelling, grammar, and historical knowledge aligned with what was one might expect from someone illiterate in 1541. Linguists and historians have reviewed the texts. While nothing definitive proves that they had to come from the 16th century, the language wasn't something you'd expect from a bored teenager in the 80s. Whoever wrote these messages had done their homework, or they were telling the truth. And then there were the physical aspects. Thomas reported his own disturbances. He claimed that strange boxes appeared in his home, lights without fire, apparitions. From his side of the timeline, Ken was the ghost. Of course, not everyone was convinced. Friends thought Ken was pulling a stunt. Some suggested he had multiple personalities. Others claimed he was lonely and isolated and projecting, like a grown-up version of talking to your imaginary friend, just with a typewriter and electric board. But Ken disagreed. He wasn't lonely, he had Debbie. And if he was going to invent someone to talk to, he sure as hell wouldn't have made them speak like a horny Shakespeare character having a stroke. But let's be honest, if you had access to a ghost from the 1500s who could read your texts, you'd probably ask some dumb shit too. But Thomas was the first one that got weird with it. He once commented on Debbie's appearance. From across the centuries, the ghost dropped the 16th century equivalent of "Thy lady doth have thine most plumpest bosom, and I wouldst smash most verily." Somewhere in the multiverse, there's a version of Bridgerton written by this dude, filtered through ChatGPT on bath salts. Now here's a thought. That this BBC microcomputer had no modem, no connection to anything, and yet his messages were appearing. Whole conversations, dialogues with the dead. So we gotta ask, if that old British box was getting action like that, why, what excuse do you have? I mean, this machine got ghost DM'd harder than your high school crush during a Mercury retrograde. Forget Ouija boards. Apparently, all you need to sex the ghost is 32 kilobytes of RAM and crippling skepticism. So by the end of the first few weeks, Ken and Debbie had gone from casual hauntings to full-blown digital communication with what they thought was a man from another era. But the deeper they dug, the stranger it got. The messages weren't just about friendship or curiosity. They began to hint at observers, rules, and warnings. Another presence was watching, and it did not want the conversation to continue. Which that wraps up Act 1, friends. Act 1. Alright, so first things first. Let's look at this computer. What was it? A BBC Microcomputer, 1984. Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, this guy's a little archaic. Let me pull this up so y'all can see what I see. Oh, that's from last week. I am sorry. Let's get rid of the slideshow here. Whop. And let's bring display capture back up. Beep bop. There it is. Wait, why is that? Why is that in the corner like that? Let's bring that back out. Yeah. There we go. So this is a BBC microcomputer from 1984. These things are archaic, to say the least. Old school. Old school. This didn't even have a disk drive. This was one of those machines that ran on cassettes for memory. And if you see there at the left side of the monitor there, for those of you not being able to watch right now, we're looking at an old, when I say old computer, this kind of hits the nail on the head. We've actually got a 2-3 color screen, black background, white text. We got some red and yellow and green graphics here. A huge, gigantic keyboard. This thing is as old school as it gets. And to the left side of it, we actually have a tape deck. And so back in the day, these were used instead of floppy disks. These computers actually used cassettes, and the data was stored on cassettes. Essentially, a scroll version of a floppy disk. Whereas a floppy disk is like a CD or a hard drive today, where your data would be written from the center out, but in a microscopic scale. Floppy disks are done the same way, from the center out. It's a rotating disk inside of that shell. If you were to take that, it's like a record, starts in the middle and spirals its way outward. If you were to cut that into a strip, roll it up into a cassette tape, like one of these. Yeah, I'm that old. I just keep mixtapes laying around. These would go into that tape deck to the left side of this monitor here, and that's where your data would be stored. These were physical copies of programs back in the day. Technology's come a long way, folks. Look at, you've got that, and let me see. Hey Google, how much data was stored on a BBC microcassette?
Sure. Here's some helpful information I found on the web.
100 to 800 kilobytes of storage. ADFS floppy disks, 20 megabytes. 20 megabytes in one of these. This is a 2 terabyte hard drive. Do the math yourself, folks. Technology has come a long, long way. Yes, I actually do keep cassette tapes just laying around. I have a whole pile of them back here. Showing my age, thank you. But yeah, that's a BBC microcomputer. This is what we're talking about. So this guy was powering up every day and finding messages on this. So in order to put messages on this, somebody would have to physically type and then store it onto the cassette tape. I don't see how this could be done easily or quickly. We have a big thing today where we love mechanical keyboards. We like the clickety-clack. I love the clickety-clack. I've got like a $200 mechanical keyboard. I love the clickety-clack. It's a thing we do today. It's just an analog junkie thing. I don't see how anybody could get into this guy's house and type on one of these and him not hear it. And then saving it, because the scrolling of the tape, it's ridiculous. I don't see out of the gate how that could happen. But, I could be, who's to say stuff like this hasn't been, done in the background or what have you. So we're moving on to Act 2. Act 2, everybody. Act 2. And the title of Act 2 is Crossing the Line. Let's get into it. Y'all ready? Because I'm ready. I'm ready. So what started as sporadic poetic messages from Thomas soon shifted into something far more unsettling. The tone darkened. The text became more intelligent, sharper, even hostile. The files began appearing with greater frequency, sometimes after being deleted. And Ken wasn't working alone anymore. He brought in Nick, a close friend and fellow teacher who helped document the occurrences. Together they logged everything, each file, each phrase, each weird spelling and syntax anomaly. And the messages, they were responding directly to them, not just reaching to reacting to old prompts or behaving like a pre-programmed script, but holding conversations, arguments, banter, challenges. And in one occasion, Thomas claimed he was part of a, quote, circle of learned men in the 1500s, and that the messages were reaching him through a, quote, light box left in his home. Possibly, he theorized, by spirits or angels. He believed Ken and Debbie were supernatural entities tormenting or testing him. But then...
Hey bud, how's it going?
Oh, it's Lip, everyone. Hello, welcome in. Welcome. I'm glad to have you tonight. We've got some high strangeness on deck tonight. It is a wild story, wild ride, wild ride. Glad you're here. We met you last week. Very glad to have you. You just jumped in at Act 2. We're just starting to dip off into it. The long story short is, this guy's got a computer in 1984, and he's getting strange messages from somebody who claims to be living in the 1500s. However, the person messaging him from the 1500s claims that the guy in 1984 is the ghost tormenting him. And, we spent a few minutes going over the BBC Micro that this guy had from in the 1980s. And this thing didn't have an internet connection. So we are unsure at this point how this is all transpiring. But it's all starting to come around and get a little personal. This guy says, in the 1500s, says that he's communicating with these people in 1984 from a, quote, light box in his house, and believes that he's being tested by angels.
Oh snap, I had one of those. I remember you had to load games with a cassette tape that took like half an hour.
Yeah.
L-U-L.
Yeah, we just talked about the size difference from a cassette tape to a hard drive. Yeah, you still have one. Oh, you had one of those. Okay, I got a little excited. I'm a sucker for old computer systems. I got a Commodore 64 back here somewhere. but yeah, it's wild because, I mean, there's no way outside of somebody coming in and typing these messages that somebody can, I mean 1984, showing my age here, but those keyboards were so loud. It was a keyboard, sure, but I mean, it might as well have been a typewriter. It's so loud. I don't see how anybody could have been coming into this guy's house and typing messages. And we didn't really have data manipulation back then. Not like we do today. This guy would see a message and delete it, and then it would come back up. And whoever's messaging him knows like specifics about this guy's family and what's going on in the room. So the way it's looking right now, we got 1500s guy, 1984 guy. The 1500s guy thinks he's being haunted by the 1984 guy, and the 1984 guy thinks he's being haunted by the 1500s guy. There's some weird cross pattern going on here, but we're getting into the nitty gritty of it. We'll go back a paragraph and read a little bit here. The messages were responding directly to them, not just reacting to old prompts or behaving like a pre-programmed script, but they were holding conversations, arguments, banter, challenges. And in one message, Thomas claimed to be a part of a circle of learned men in the 1500s, and that the messages were reaching him through a, quote, light box left in his home. Possibly, he theorized, by spirits or angels. He believed Ken and Debbie were supernatural entities tormenting or testing him. But then came a shift. Suddenly, there was talk of surveillance, manipulation, and a new voice appeared on the machine. The entity, known only as 2109, made his debut in the early years of 1985, where Thomas, or Lucas, whichever one you want to say, came across as confused and curious and emotional. 2109 was cold, clinical, and extremely precise. Its tone was authoritative and at times condescending. It didn't ask questions, it gave warnings. One of its first messages was short, direct, and terrifying. Ken, Deb, there is another person you must be aware of. We are 2109. You must not interfere. Chilling, right? So if Thomas was a ghost fumbling through a digital seance in the 1500s, 2109 sounded like a cosmic moderator or an interdimensional hall monitor with a god complex, right? They weren't just watching, they were keeping score. So what followed was a bizarre and often conflicting string of interactions between Ken's group in 1984, Thomas in the 1500s, and 2109 in an unknown time period. Sometimes the messages seemed to arrive in sequence. Other times it felt like two entities fighting for the keyboard. Ken would ask Thomas a question and get a response from 2109, cutting him off, or vice versa. At times, messages would disappear and be replaced. One reply even contained what looked like a glitch or a timestamp, something way beyond what the microcomputer should have been able to do. More than once, Thomas claimed to be afraid of 2109. They are not men. They know all, and they see me. But despite high strangeness, Ken continued to correspond with Thomas. Through weeks of dialogue, they pieced together a crude portrait. Thomas was a former teacher, possibly a Catholic or aligned with the clergy, living in post-Henry the 5, 6, 7, 8. I have to count the Roman numerals, excuse me. Living in post-Henry the 8 England, a time of religious tension, surveillance, and civil paranoia. He seemed to be aware that he might die soon. He talked about authorities cracking down on heretical writings. He referenced hiding papers, the danger of speaking with spirits, and the fear that witchfinders or bishops might discover his connection to the light box. At one point, he hinted that someone had already come for him, and that he might not be able to write again. The messages stopped for a time. So now imagine this. From Thomas's point of view, of course. You got this magic box in your house. Angels gave it to you. It talks back. You made a weird friendship with a couple in the future, and then bam! Some smug bastard from another future shows up mid-convo telling you to log off. That's got to be the 16th century equivalent of being ghost blocked. Ghost blocked. See what I did there? Thomas was trying to get to third base and with a ghost chick from the 1980s, and instead 2109 popped in like, this chat's being monitored for quality assurance, good sirs. And that poor guy never stood a chance. Yeah. I'm not great at writing jokes, but that's as good as that's going to get. Word of the messages eventually got out. Ken, trying to keep things under control, reached out to academics and paranormal researchers. One of those was Gary Rowe, a local investigator affiliated with groups like the Society for Psychical Research, which we've touched on many, many times, most notably the Enfield haunting. Society for Psychical Research was in its infancy then, and really put a lot of people on the map, especially Ed and Lorraine Warren. Society for Psychical Research is solely responsible for thoroughly and unbiasedly investigating paranormal happenings. Gary examined the microcomputer, interviewed Ken and Debbie, and analyzed the messages. His conclusion? He didn't know what to make of it, but he didn't think it was a hoax. Tests on the BBC Micro turned up no signs of tampering, no extra code, no outside interference, nothing to suggest a Trojan horse or a programmatic trick. Which really wasn't a thing on those old school computers like that. Not really. Not like this, not at this scale. And that's when 2109 began addressing the investigators directly. So as the months went on, 2109's tone became more direct, more aggressive. They spoke about Ken's timeline being critical to maintaining the path, and warned that Thomas's correspondence was dangerous. They insisted Ken was part of a greater experiment, one he didn't understand. There is purpose in your actions, but your minds are not yet ready. At one point, 2109 even claimed responsibility for allowing the communication to happen, as if the whole thing was staged, a test, almost like a simulation. They claimed that Ken was helping to bridge understanding between three distinct time periods. Thomas in the 1500s, Ken's in the 1980s, and their own 2109. Each was being observed, compared, and measured. But why? What the hell was being tested? Ken never got a clear answer. So let's break it down. Ken's microcomputer is being ghost DM'd by a 16th century teacher. The ghosts think Ken's house is haunted by Ken, and now a time-traveling future bureaucrat shows up to monitor their entire interaction like some type of temporal voyeur. If this isn't the nerdiest, ghostliest three-way in British history, I don't know what is. All that's missing is someone from the 1800s show up to invent a steampunk OnlyFans. Yeah. I'm great at writing shitty jokes. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here at Beyond the Shadows podcast.
Just waiting for an alien to make an appearance,
Oh, they might. At this point, I mean, honestly, this is peak high strangeness. This is so bizarre. This is so strange. The first time I heard about this, the article I read had like actual transcripts. I wish they had photos of the screen. That would have been really convincing for me. But I read some like actual transcripts, handwritten transcripts of typed messages, and they were weird. Like the rhetoric was really weird. Like it read like Shakespeare. Like a lot of the stuff was like hath and doth. Just like weird Shakespearean rhetoric. Sidebar. Learned something about Shakespeare this week. Shakespeare, for all his glory, all of his writing that he's done, these great, tremendous stories he's told through poetry and playwriting, there is no historical timeline for anybody by the name Shakespeare. There's no birth, no death, no life. Nobody has ever physically interacted with him and recorded it. It just seems like this guy showed up, wrote all these epic poems and plays, and dipped out. There is no historical lineage about William Shakespeare at all. There is no record. Super weird. Super weird. Super weird. So this is where things start to get a little weirder. Messages started referencing ideas Ken and Debbie hadn't discussed aloud. Books that hadn't been published yet, events that hadn't occurred. One message warned that something, quote, of great consequence was coming. A moment in time where things would splinter, and Ken's choices would define which timeline moved forward. 2109 wasn't observing anymore. They were nudging. Ken would later report that the files were appearing and disappearing without warning. Some messages were never saved, but would suddenly show up again months later. And in one particular unnerving moment, a new file appeared with a list of phrases he'd spoken out loud while the computer was unplugged from the wall. He was being watched, not just through the machine, but in his home. Which concludes Act 2. So in Act 3, we're going to cover some controlled experiments. This is what the Society for Psychical Research does. They put the science into the part of the paranormal investigation. I don't think we have any direct influence here with the Society for Psychical Research, but somebody took a page from their doctrine and got really scientific with it and decided to start doing some controlled experiments. Which brings us to Act 3. I love the little Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, Act 5 little videos. Gives me just a minute to pick my nose when nobody's watching. Got to do it off screen, folks. Don't be gross. This is the observation phase. So by early 1985, Ken and Debbie's house felt more like a lab than a home. The BBC Microcomputer, once used for lesson plans and homework, had become a conduit for something far beyond their understanding. Messages weren't just appearing at random anymore, they were triggered by questions, by emotions, and sometimes even by thoughts. Ken began to suspect that the house itself was being monitored, that every move was being recorded, not just through the screen, but through something else. And he wasn't wrong. To make sense of what was happening, Ken and his team began documenting everything. Message logs, audio recordings, detailed timestamps, behavioral notes after each interaction. They even drew diagrams of the house, trying to determine if certain areas, the kitchen, the living room, the haunted study, were more prone to activity. But the evidence didn't follow any pattern. Sometimes the messages appeared late at night. Sometimes they came minutes after powering off the computer. Once, a message popped up while the computer was completely off and disconnected from power. So here's where the Society for Psychical Research gets involved. Ken contacted a local paranormal investigator, Peter Tinder, who passed word of the case along to members of the Society for Psychical Research, SPR. The SPR was no fly-by-night ghost hunting group. These were academics, linguists, psychologists, historians, who took paranormal claims seriously but approached them with rigorous scrutiny. One of their biggest questions was this an elaborate hoax? Ken invited them to run tests. They examined the hardware. They watched the behavior of the participants. They checked for outside transmission, wireless interference, electromagnetic surges, all the usual suspects. They found nothing. No tampering, no foul play, and the messages kept coming. 2109 did not like the outside attention. They began sending threatening messages not just to Ken, but to the SPR researchers. At one point, 2109 told them, "Cease your investigations or face the consequences." Then came this bombshell. "You are helping us with a task far greater than you realize. We are not what you think we are. Your understanding of time is incorrect. You are part of a communication experiment." Not a haunting, not a glitch, an experiment.
Aliens.
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 Aliens. We're dealing with aliens. This has got to be aliens. Gotta be. Ghosts don't know how to freaking work computers. Not from the 1500s. I'm curious of the interface between the light box and a computer. How does that work? I want to know. I want to know. Imagine being told you're in a century-spanning experiment and didn't even get paid for it. Ken, Debbie, and Thomas were basically paranormal lab rats. Except instead of running through mazes for cheese, they were getting manipulated by a glowing box and a time-traveling version of Clippy from Microsoft Word with God issues. And if 2109 really was observing them for behavioral analysis, then somewhere in the future, a clipboard-wielding alien probably had notes like, "Subject continues to flirt with ghosts from the 1500s. Recommend further observation. Possibly horny."
Who are you calling a cootie queen, you lit liquor?
Aliens, like I said, aliens.
I'm not saying it's space aliens, right? But it goes without saying it's fucking space aliens.
So at one point, 2109 referenced a book that didn't yet exist. They claimed that a text, later titled The Vertical Plane, would be published, documenting the Dodleston Messages in full. This was long before Ken had considered turning the events into a manuscript. It wasn't a suggestion, it was a statement of fact. And when Ken hesitated, 2109 warned him. "It will happen. You are part of this. You do not decide." It felt like they were following a script Ken hadn't seen, a future he had yet lived, but had already been there. This wasn't just manipulation, it was predestination. So now I'm curious, what was the name of that book, The Vertical Plane? Let's look it up. Oh, it was a book Ken wrote. Check this out. The Vertical Plane. The Mystery of the Dodleston Messages, 2nd edition. So, red flag. Hear me out. A voice from the future tells me that I am going to be in a book called The Vertical Plane, and then I go and write a book, and I'm like, what am I going to name it? And I say, oh, The Vertical Plane. That's not coincidence. That's suggestion, folks. That's how that works. This guy didn't... So that little slice of evidence would have been really, really convincing if somebody else outside his little circle wrote the book, right? Yeah, hard to really call that evidence. A little wishy-washy here. A little wishy-washy. Not gonna lie. The messages became increasingly meta, referencing the act of being observed and the limitations of language and comprehension. 2109 began to sound more like a philosophy textbook written by Hell 9000 on acid. One message read, "We are not gods. We are not aliens. We are not from your time, yet time does not exist as you know it. The past, present, and future all converge here. This is your testing ground." They weren't just talking to Ken, they were talking through him to someone else. Some theorized that 2109 was communicating with a future audience, maybe even with us, on this podcast. And let's be honest, it wouldn't be the weirdest podcast promo of all time, right? Insert joke here, you ready? So what do you call it when ghost time travelers and British school teachers are all spying on each other from across centuries? Temporal gangbang with no safe words. Yeah, at this point you've got Thomas watching Ken, 2109 watching both of them, and the SPR watching everyone. It's like Love Island for sad, nerdy metaphysicists with who have never touched grass. So, yeah. It wasn't just messages anymore. Ken began to notice cold spots in the house, shadows, and on one occasion objects disappeared, then reappeared in odd places, a stack of cans rearranging themselves while no one was in the room. Debbie was reportedly pushed, and not metaphorically, but physically. Ken described the feeling of pressure around the machine, like the air thickened when it was turned on, like someone was watching just beyond the veil of sight. Whatever was coming through the computer has found its way into the rest of the home. And we've come to the part of the episode where I switch our category on Twitch to just chatting, to see if we can pull more people into the live stream. 31.7 million followers, 462,000 viewers. Let's see how many people pop into chat, folks. I bet it's just you, Lip. That's okay. If it is just you, Lip, I'm alright with that. It beats talking to the screen. But real talk. I appreciate you being here. I do. If my wife had the patience for this stuff, she'd be watching too. But she's listening. She's in the next room, very much so listening. We do after the episode. We talk at length about the episode, and she watches when I edit it and everything. But she's into it, but not like I am.
LUL, I enjoy the story.
Hey, I appreciate it. Hey, drinking, buddy. Let's go. Let's go. Yeah, a couple beers and a couple good friends to talk to. That's all I need. So at this point, it wasn't just messages anymore. Ken began to notice cold spots in the house. Shadows. Oh, wait, we read that part. Sorry. Hey, let me play a random sound effect. One I haven't used in a while. No, I actually used a lot of these. Now, here you go. Now that one.
Are you calling a cootie queen, you lint liquor?
So the question remained, was Thomas real? Was 2109 real? And what if Ken was being manipulated to make choices that aligned with an desired outcome? What if the vertical plane was more than just a book? What if it was a mechanism, a fixed point, a fulcrum in time? 2109 insisted it wasn't fiction, that the timeline required it. So Ken wrote it. And when he did, messages changed again. So as 2109's tone grew darker, their vocabulary shifted from guidance to warning. They said their experiment had been successful, that they claimed that others, plural, others, would continue it, and they hinted that the world would soon face events that would validate everything they'd said. No dates, no specifics, just a cold assurance that you will know when it begins. Which brings us to the end of Act 3. So let's see. 1984, what was the... Let me look it up. What was the largest event since 1983? Or 1984? No single event since 1984 can definitively be called the largest, as this can be measured by different metrics, including impact, attendance, and historical significance. The biggest event depends on the chosen criteria. Here are some of the most significant contenders for the largest event. The end of the Cold War in 1989 to 91. And then from there we had 9/11, the COVID-19 pandemic. Oh, they're actually saying that COVID-19 was more impactful than 9/11. I mean,
I'm not saying it's space aliens, right? But it goes without saying it's fucking space aliens.
yeah. We could go down a rabbit hole about 9/11 all day long. That would make a good episode. That would make a really good episode talking about 9/11. There is some weird stuff to do with 9/11. Not quite as cookie cutter as you'd think. I'll let you go down that rabbit hole on your own for now. We might touch on that later. 1989, the invention of the World Wide Web.
Have to be careful about that stuff, though.
Right? Yeah. Especially with Trump in office, I'd be a little scared to talk about anything political. 2008, the Great Recession. 2020, coronavirus crash. And then it gives me the largest single crowd events since 1984. The Monsters of Rock in Moscow in 1981 or 1991. Yeah, why would you give me concerts? I don't want concerts. I mean, kudos, Google AI, you did great. But yeah, you gotta be kind of touchy about the 9/11 stuff. Still not quite like on par with where I want to talk socially. Like, too soon, not too soon. I see lots of 9/11 jokes, and I don't know. Lip, I know you're not American, but I mean 9/11 was a big deal here. Like, I went to high school in the country down south, and the southern part of the United States, and we didn't get out of school for nothing. Bad weather, tornadoes, nothing. We didn't get out of school for anything. But we got out of school for 9/11. People were scared. It was wild. But there's a lot of things about 9/11 that just don't line up. That the more things are being released and information is being put out there, more footage is coming to light, and you've got to kind of take it with a grain of salt, because at this point, and Lip, I don't know if you were watching earlier in season 2 when we were doing the rapid fire episodes. The big reason we stopped doing it, for those listening, we did rapid fire episodes where we would pull videos from social media that had to do with like paranormal happenings, and it got to the point where AI is so advanced now that we were having trouble discerning what was real and what wasn't. AI is crazy, absolutely crazy. It's spot on with details. All you got to do is type in a prompt what you want and say, make it look like a freaking camcorder from 1996, and it will do that. And it will downsample that video, and it will look like something from 1996. And I challenge you to pick apart those old videos. So that's why we quit doing the rapid fire episodes, because these videos, it was like, oh, AI, next one, AI, next one, AI, next one, that one could be real, but AI could do it. So at what point does it become, you quit being entertaining, right? So like new footage is being released about 9/11, the quote unquote unreleased security camera footage from the gate outside the Pentagon. AI could create that, right? I mean, everybody's using it. Heck, I use AI for the podcast. I use it to make thumbnails for the YouTube channel. Everybody uses AI, and the more we use it, the more advanced it becomes. It's really, really hard for somebody to come out with the, hey, here's an unreleased video from 9/11. I don't know if it's real. I'm not going to feed into that mill. I'm not going to feed into the propaganda machine. Not this guy. But we have hit our halfway point, and I do need to use the restroom. So I'm going to run my little tiny ad that I created myself. And I'm going to go use the restroom. So hold your horses. We'll be right back. Hey folks, it's your host Victus. Thanks for watching Beyond the Shadows podcast. I just want to take a second to ask if you would be so kind to hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment down below. follow us, whatever you need to do. Because we have no ads, we have no sponsors, we have zero budget. Everything I do sitting here at this desk, and I do it by myself. So if you could take the time out of your day and hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, it would help us out tremendously. It helps keep this podcast ad-free, in fact. But you didn't know that. And if you have your own story that you want to tell, you can even reach out to us. Yeah, it's true. You can reach out to us. Our email is beyondshadowspodcast@gmail.com, or you could scan this QR code right here. Yeah, how simple is that? The QR code takes you everywhere you need to go that pertains to Beyond the Shadows podcast. So hit that like, hit that subscribe, drop a comment down below, and if you've got a story you want to hear, or you have a personal story that's something that's happened to you, email us at beyondshadowspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you everyone for listening. You all are so amazing. Let's get this back on the road. Sorry to take up your time. Hello friends, I'm back. How did you like my homemade ad, Lip? Made that just for me. Trying to get the numbers to climb a little bit. I'm proud of myself. That was good. I'm very proud. Very proud. Cool. So I didn't get to use the bathroom. My wife is taking a shower and locked the door. So.
It made me sub LUL.
Ah, sweet. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, every single, because the plan long term is to do this full time. I would love to do this full time, and be a full time podcaster. That's the plan. That's the dream, right? I'm trying to boost the numbers and listen closely to people listening, not live, but it takes a little bit of groundwork, and I don't want to bring in sponsors. I don't want to bring in, I'm sorry for those of you watching on Twitch that have to deal with ads. I'm sorry, but I can't control that. But, my uploads to YouTube, outside of YouTube's ad, I don't make money off of YouTube. I'm not monetized. Twitch, I make a little bit of money off of Twitch, but like $50 a year. I can't pay the bills on that. So, I'm gonna try to put a little bit of groundwork in for myself. I appreciate you, Liv. I really do. You are the only person who's been this consistent in the podcast since day one. Aside from myself, a buddy of mine set up a bot to watch every time I go streaming or go live on Twitch. But you know that I think that Twitch recognizes it as a bot, so I don't really get the count as a view. So like last week, you weren't here. I had 0 watchers. It's just I don't know. I can't get the traction I want. I don't have boobs, okay? And I'm not going to show you all my feet. I'm sorry, I'm not that desperate. Sorry, Lip, if that's what you're here for. I'm not going to show you my feet. Yeah, sorry, I'm not a feet pics guy.
It's tough, man. It's a niche topic on a fairly niche platform.
It really is. You know, I streamed for 5 years on Twitch, doing the video game thing for 5 years, and you know it's super saturated. It would take another pandemic to come around for me to maybe take off, and that's why the podcasting world is so narrow right now, because everybody saw how when COVID hit, there was a huge spike in podcasters and YouTubers and streamers. I'm not saying I'm hoping there's going to be another pandemic. I don't, because I like being able to pay my bills, but it would be nice to get a spike enough to where I can get monetized on YouTube. That would be sweet. But you're right, it is tough. I streamed for 5 years gaming, never made a penny, and I got my first payout after I started the podcast. I got to the point where I was affiliate on Twitch, and the payout just never came because nobody watched. But honestly, Lip, you were the first and only consistent subscriber, and hell, I got a $50 check 6 months ago, and you are the reason, solely you, that I've got this sweet piece of hardware right here, and it helps so much. Oh my gosh, it helps so much. So I can do stuff like
change my voice
into anything I want. Or I could switch my scenes, so now I don't have to grab my mouse to do this stuff. I can streamline it, and 99% of what I have here, equipment-wise, is hand-me-downs. I built my computer, I bought a nice monitor, but everything else here in front of me is hand-me-down. Well, except for the microphone. I bit the bullet and bought this stupid, expensive microphone. It's about quality. You want to give quality, right? I mean, my headset, it was like a $25 headset from Walmart. My camera, that was my other expense. Yeah, that's a GoPro. It's a very expensive GoPro. But I have a bar, and I want to keep it up there at that quality. I'm paying for higher quality internet. I'm paying for a higher stream output through Twitch. There's a few things. I've got bills. I'm paying them. I'm losing money on this podcast. But I do it because I love it. But if I could find a way to monetize and make a little bit of that money back, that would be ideal. But I'm proud of my little commercial. I really am. I call it a commercial. I actually have a button on this little doodad here. It says run a commercial. And that's the button I hit to switch scenes. So thanks, Lip. I appreciate it. I appreciate everything you do here. You're the only one keeping me on my feet. I keep coming back every week because of you. If I had no one to talk to, I probably wouldn't podcast, honestly. So I appreciate you being here. I really do. It's the truth. And I don't know you from Adam. You really seem like a cool dude. I appreciate you being here. I really do.
Well, I get my own personal podcast, so I can't complain.
Oh, you do? What's your podcast? Let's talk about it. Tell me about your podcast. Plug yourself, man. Let's plug it. Let me pull it up. Let me show everybody listening. I've got like 200 subscribers on Spotify. Let's let everybody that's listening hear your podcast. I'll subscribe to your podcast right now.
LUL, no, I mean you are my personal podcast.
Oh, okay. Well, it got me excited. I was like, oh, cool. Another podcast to listen to. I destroy podcasts for a living. That's what I do. So I do have a full-time job. Monday through Saturday I work. And I'm the oddball at work. A lot of like straight-laced folks. Boots, jeans, plain t-shirts. All they care about is their job, their dog, and their wife. Nobody gets it. I've tried to get people to really get into it, but you know, I've got one guy at work that tells me he's got some stories about something like a Bigfoot, and you know, one day I'll get his story, but it's hard to, you know, so I don't really like chum it up with anybody at work. So when I'm at work, I listen to podcasts. I'll put an earbud in while I'm working. And I will destroy a podcast. I will listen to full seasons in a day. I will do 8.5 hours of podcast in my ear a day. And it is hard to find a good podcast to listen to. But, I mean, if I wasn't the host of this podcast, I would listen to it. But that's the problem I saw when I was setting up this as a podcast, was a lot of the paranormal podcasts out there weren't it wasn't a person just talking. It was like two people banter. Oh, this was a ghost story, check out this picture. Banter. Sure, the banter's great, but you're not telling a story. You're not getting across the subject, and that's what I'm trying to do here. Sure, season 1, back when I had another host, we had lots of banter, but we still covered the subject. And that's really hard to find when it comes to paranormal podcasts. That, or the hosts are just so boring and dry. Like, what's the point of listening to it, right? That's just me. I'm very particular. Very, very particular. That, and you don't hear a lot of podcasters just like drinking on the podcast, which is what I do. I'm gonna have fun here, but to put it in a nutshell for you, this is a nutshell. This is my face in a nutshell. Hello, I'm in a nutshell. I'm not out to make money. I'm not. I do this because I love it. I've been a paranormal fan since day one. I tell this story all the time. I can remember back in the day when I was like 5-6 years old, my dad was not a great dude. Didn't take me anywhere, didn't spend time with me. And I would want to go camping. I wanted to be out in the wilderness, but he wouldn't take me. So I would go and set up the tent in my backyard. And I'm like, this isn't spooky enough, right? So I would listen to Coast to Coast AM. I would pick my little Sony stereo out there and, you know, listen to my CD for like 10 or 15 minutes, get bored with that, flip to the radio. The radio, I've always hated the radio. And so I would switch to AM radio, and I would like scroll through all those AM radio programs, listening for something halfway interesting. And I can remember to this day, at 5 years old, laying on a sleeping bag in my backyard in a tent, finding Coast to Coast AM, and they were talking about Area 51. Talking about aliens and UFOs, and that was it. Day one for me. And since then, I have been hooked. And that is my mission statement, is that I want to make this podcast something engaging and interesting to listen to. So, I mean, I've been rambling for 5 minutes, but you get what I'm getting at here. I'm doing what inspired me as a child to hopefully inspire somebody of a younger generation, and make them question the world as it is. and make it entertaining. I'm not saying I want younger viewers. Oh, geez. Yeah, this is a juice box. This is juice. Apple juice. Yeah, Twitch is a little funny about alcohol, but any hoots and hollers. Let's get back in there. We're up to Act 4, everybody. Thanks for letting me rant there for a minute. I'm passionate about this. And if I can make a little money, make up what I've put into it, that's the goal. Break even, that's all I want to do. So let's get into it. We're back into it. We are back to the Dodleston Ghost in the Machine. We've come to Act 4. The Fall of Thomas. I'm clearing my throat a lot. Watch, I'm going to get hiccups later. I'm trying not to lean towards the mic when I do it, but that's the way it goes sometimes. So we've come to Act 4, everybody. Act 4, The Fall of Thomas. So for weeks, Ken and his circle had grown used to the ghostly pen pal. Thomas Lucas Harden was flawed, poetic, fearful, and at times strangely warm. He called Debbie Fair Lady. He asked questions about life in the 1980s. He feared punishment from his own time, the clergy, witch hunters, the shadowy forces of the crown, then vanished. No goodbye, no final message, just silence. The screen stopped flickering. The house grew cold again. But not active, just still. But this time, there was nothing. Oh, wait, I missed the whole sentence. Ah, jeez. Yeah, sorry, I scrolled. At first, Ken assumed the messages would return. They always had, but this time, there was nothing. Nothing at all. It didn't take long for 2109 to step in to fill the void. Thomas is no longer available. Do not seek him. You must focus. Ken was pissed. Debbie was devastated. And Nick, their friend and co-investigator, began to question whether they'd been talking to a real person at all. Was Thomas ever real? Or had 2109 simply been playing both parts? Ghost and guardian, past and future. The timing of his disappearance felt deliberate, too neat. Right when the investigators started asking harder questions, right when the manuscript for the vertical plane began to take shape. So imagine getting emotionally attached to a time-traveling ghost pen pal, only for him to vanish with no closure. Ghosting is one thing, but this dude invented it. That's right. Thomas felt the full 16th century fuckboy. He sweet-talked your girlfriend, dropped cryptic poetry, asked for proof of future technology, then dipped the second things got serious. All that was missing was a Tinder profile that said, quote, 420 friendly and haunted by consequences. So eventually a handful of messages did come through, but they were different. Short, cold, and formal. Thomas's tone had shifted. He was no longer curious or poetic. His words felt filtered, like someone was typing through him. He referenced being watched, being punished, and most disturbingly, he mentioned seeing, quote, the light box burn. He didn't elaborate, but when asked what he meant, he replied, "There is no more time. The circle closes. I am not who I was." And with that, Thomas was gone. So by then, 2109 took full control. They began answering questions about the structure of reality. They claimed that Ken's actions, writing back, publishing, inviting researchers, had all triggered ripple effects that would echo into future events. They spoke of branching timelines where small actions created massive deviations. They said that the past, present, and future were linked, not by causality, but by observation. The act of watching creates the path. You do not move through time, you shape it by seeing it. So now Ken wasn't just a ghost. Oh, I'm sorry, but yeah, I screwed that all the way up. Yeah, sorry. So now, jeez, give me a second. This is what I mean about the real shit in podcasting. I'm not going to polish my stuff. I don't edit anything. Not really. Unless there's like a major network flaw and I can't stream anymore. I don't edit nothing. This gets uploaded right after I get done streaming to YouTube. So now, Ken wasn't just a ghost magnet. He was a participant in shaping human history, or so 2109 claimed. If 2109 was telling the truth, then they were from a future where time itself was under surveillance, where every choice, every twitch, every horny thought in a haunted cottage was recorded and assessed. It's like living in a... Hold on. I may or may not have wrote this joke while I was drinking. I don't know how to pronounce this word. Let me Google it. Yeah.
Panopticon.
Panopticon?
Panopticon. Panopticon.
How is that in my vocabulary? What is the definition of panopticon? A panopticon is an institutional building, originally a prison designed by Jeremy Bentham, characterized by a central tower surrounded by a ring of cells, allowing a single guard to observe inmates who cannot tell if they are being watched, leading to internalized discipline. Panopticon. Let me roll it back. So if 2109 was telling the truth, they were from the future, where time itself was under surveillance, where every choice, every twitch, every horny thought in a haunted cottage was recorded and assessed. It's like living in a panopticon run by your ex, a priest, and Hale 9000, all at the same time. No wonder Thomas wanted out. This is why you don't write the script while you're drinking. This kind of shit happens. Sorry. Sorry, not sorry? Yeah. 2109 had more red flags than a poltergeist-only dating app. Swipe left if you're from the past, present, or think for yourself. Yeah. So at this point, Ken started asking a dangerous question. Was 2109 even from the future? Some theories began to take shape. 2109 was a cover for government experimentation, the computer acting as a test bed for psychological warfare or time manipulation experiments. Or 2109 was a form of AI, either self-aware or programmed to monitor human consciousness. Or Thomas and 2109 were split personalities of the same intelligence. One the mask, the other the manipulator. Or the entire thing was real. Time as we know it was being bent around a haunted typewriter, a horny ghost, and a teacher who just wanted to get through grading papers. No answer felt satisfying. So we come to the breakdown. So as 1985 came to a close, things began to unravel. Ken was losing sleep, Debbie was growing paranoid, and Nick began pulling away from the project entirely. Their social circle Yep. 3 beers. And I can't even read my script. Three beers. Wow. I mean, to be fair, it's 10%, right? So that's strong, right? 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 I mean, 10% is good. All right, let's try this again. So as 1985 came to a close, things began to unravel. Ken was losing sleep. Debbie was growing paranoid. Nick began pulling away from the project entirely. Their social circle shrank. The SPR investigators stopped visiting. What had once been an incredible anomaly had become a slow-burning descent into obsession. Ken kept writing. 2109 kept replying. But it felt less like discovery and more like programming. Each message answered just enough to keep him asking. Each answered birthed 5 new questions. One of the final 2109 messages that year included this line. You will write the book. Others will read it. A man in 1996 will understand. His voice is needed. This was a full decade before the book would be published, and no one knew who the man in 1996 was. But the prediction stuck with... I don't know how I did that. Long hair on dudes, that happens. But the prediction stuck with Ken. That line haunted him more than any of Thomas's cryptic rhymes. Who was this man? What would he understand? And why did the future need a book from the past to be worn by the present? Nothing made sense. Which, according to 2109, meant that it worked as intended. So we've come to the end of the wow. Maybe I should keep it below 10 to 10. 3 beers for the podcast. Jeez, 2.5. This one's half gone. I'm fumbling over words. Sorry, not sorry. That's why I podcast.
Who are you calling a cootie queen, you lit liquor?
So we've come to the end of Act 4. The end of Act 4. It's all looking a little funny, looking a little weird. I'm starting to form an idea of what I think this story's all about. And so Lip, you weren't here for this last week, but I've got somebody else writing the script for me now. I put the jokes in, my crappy jokes, but I don't read the script before the podcast now because I want to form my opinion as we go through the evidence. I'm starting to form an opinion on this. I'm starting to. But we're close. We're close to the end here. We're close to the end. So we've come to Act 5. Act 5. And this act is appropriately named The Vertical Plane. Let's go. So in 1989, nearly 5 years after the first message appeared, Ken Webster finally published The Vertical Plane. It documented the entire Dodleston experience in excruciating detail. Every message, every interaction, personalities of Thomas and 2109, the psychological toll, the growing sense that reality itself was bent in service of something unseen. Despite the extraordinary nature of the story, the book was met with mixed fascination and skepticism. Some called it the greatest time slip case ever recorded. Others dismissed it as a clever work of fiction or psychological delusion. But the most unnerving part, it read like prophecy. 2109 had said that the book had to be written, not for fame, but because it would, quote, plant the seed, a moment fixed in time, designed to ripple outward, trigger. The publication itself was the part of the experiment. So in the final years of 2109's communication, they referenced a man from 1996, someone who would read The Vertical Plane and understand what others had missed. Ken never found out what that was. No one stepped forward, no hidden savior, and no secret key. But the idea lingered that someone someday might connect the dots in a way that no one else had. And if they did, what then? So let's pause for a second and acknowledge that the only book club members that cared this much was a future-dwelling, omniscient keyboard voyeur who couldn't be bothered to write a proper plot summary. 2109 really said, quote, publish the book, or the timeline collapses. Also, Chapter 7 needs editing. This happens when you let AI become a lit major. Honestly, I've met Tinder matches with less attachment issues than 2109. 2109 had... Oh, I totally dropped the ball on that joke. Jeez. Honestly, I've met Tinder matches with less attachment issues than 2109 had to The Vertical Plane. Wait. Yeah. Good jokes. That's why I'm here. Alright. After publishing the book, Ken Webster stepped away from the public life. He didn't tour, he didn't capitalize. He answered a few interviews and then disappeared from the spotlight. Over the decades, The Vertical Plane became something of a cult classic in paranormal circles. Used copies sold for hundreds of dollars. It became one of the most sought-after books in high strangeness culture. Not because it proved anything, but because it didn't. It remained open-ended, unresolved, and lurking. A time capsule, waiting to be understood. But here's where it gets weirder. In the early 2000s, a few internet forums dedicated to anomalous phenomena began reporting new messages attributed to 2109. Anonymous users claimed to receive cryptic emails, glitched files, text blocks echoing the same tone and language. Nothing was ever verified, but the whispers persisted. And in 2015, a Reddit user claimed their BBC Micro emulator randomly generated a line from one of the original Dodleston Messages. They'd never heard of the story before. They were just tinkering with retro code and got a ghost. The signal, it seems, may be transmitting. So to recap, a ghost from the 1500s flirts with a girlfriend, a future entity tells you what to write, you publish a book, prevent the unraveling of time. Congratulations, you've completed the paranormal trifecta: time travel, ghost sex, and publishing deadline. And you still don't get paid. So what was this? Let's line up the possibilities one last time. 1. An elaborate hoax. Ken made it up, all of it. He faked the messages, created the personas, and committed to the bit for years. It was a masterwork of performance and paranoia. Or 2, psychological phenomena, shared delusion, group psychosis, unconscious automatic writing, an early analog version of the tulpa creation through suggestion. Or 3, haunting. Thomas was real, a residual spirit reaching out through the closest thing he had to a Ouija board, the future element. Just his mind trying to grasp at what he couldn't understand. 4, a time slip, a legitimate intersection between centuries, a, quote, vertical plane where moments stack instead of stretch, and the messages, echoes of overlapping timelines. Or 5, a simulation theory. The entire thing was an experiment, not in time, but in perception. Ken wasn't being haunted, he was being studied. Reality as he knew it was being curated, and he got too close to noticing. And what if it's all of them? There's one last thing to consider. At the very end of the vertical plane, Ken included the final message, one that he believed came from 2109, but wasn't logged the same way as the others. A kind of farewell, or maybe a final test. It read, "You may not believe us. That is your choice. There is danger in knowledge, but there is also truth. We are you, and you might become. But only if you choose correctly." There is still time, he says. So, all right, we've come to the end of it. I got to use the bathroom now. I'm sure my wife's out of the bathroom. I'm gonna go use the bathroom, and we're gonna break this thing down. Break it down. Be right back, folks. Okay, we've returned. Here it is. We've come to the end, folks. So let's break it down. We've got a guy buys a creepy cottage built in the 1800s, puts a computer in there. The computer starts talking to him. How do I put this gently? When it comes to this case specifically, I don't know that I could say this is legitimately paranormal. However, isn't the lack of evidence good evidence? It would take something really, really elaborate to put this together. It would take somebody with decent computer knowledge from 1984 spanning to 1985 to break into this guy's house and type this stuff up and then program it to respond when he talks, which seems really difficult to do in 1984 standards. Did the BBC Micro have a microphone? No way. It almost feels like it would take an astronomical amount of effort, or it really is paranormal. So what's that quote again, Blip? When you eliminate all possibilities, whatever is left. Something I keep forgetting it. I need to print this damn thing out and hang it up in front of my camera so I can see the damn thing. This is gonna happen just like last time. I'm gonna search for it, and halfway through it, you're gonna tell me.
Sherlock thing. When you eliminate the impossible, all that remains, no matter how improbable, must be true.
There you go. That's it. You're right. Yeah, as soon as it came up, your line dropped.
Or something to that effect.
Yeah, so the quote is, whenever you have the eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. It is attributed to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and his Sherlock Holmes stories. Yeah, so speaking of a computer from 1984, no such thing as a remote connection. I don't think hacking was a thing. I don't. Let me see. Could you remote connect to a BBC Micro in 1984? No, you cannot remote connect to a BBC Micro in 1984 in the way we use them today. With modern software like VNC or RDP, remote connections in 1984 were limited to text-based communications via modems, and the BBC lacked the hardware, software, and internet infrastructure for graphical remote interface and access. So we know it didn't have a modem. So I'm just curious. Let's ask ChatGTP. If BBC Micro was receiving messages in 1984, could it be done remotely? Or would you consider it paranormal? Let's see what it says. In 1984, a BBC Micro could not realistically receive direct remote messages over the internet. It could have been done normally. By the 1980s, BBC Micro could connect to a telephone line through a modem, which we know it didn't have. Local networking, but still needed a modem. Serial or parallel ports. The computer had serial and parallel interfaces. If hooked up to another device, like a second computer or even custom hardware, it could receive data streams that might look like messages. A text display program could have been preloaded to appear as though the machine was spontaneously producing words when in reality it was following a script or a hidden input routine. Oh geez, yeah, ChatGPT's on it. It says, in the Dodleston Messages case, which I think you're hinting at, the message was not the machine was not connected to a modem, Econet, or any obvious communication channel, at least according to the accounts. That's what gave it the reputation of being mysterious or paranormal. If the BBC Micro wasn't physically connected to a phone line, network, or another device, then receiving a, quote, remote message would have been impossible under normal circumstances. Without any networking or external input, the only way the text could appear would be somebody typing it locally, a program script hidden in memory storage, or something unexplained. Bottom line, technically yes, if the BBC Micro was connected to a modem, which we know it wasn't, or it could be considered paranormal if it truly had no such connections and accounts insist it didn't, then yes, people would interpret it as paranormal since the hardware alone couldn't have spontaneously pulled text out of thin air in 1984. Phenomenal breakdown. I love GTP. It's great. That's a great breakdown of. That puts everything in a nutshell. We know that it did not have a modem. Black and white. It's there. From like the first or second act, we put it down in writing that there was no modem. There's no way it could have connected, and there's no way a pre-programmed text could have predicted what was being said while the computer was unplugged. So, what's the quote again? When we eliminate all possibilities, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. So I think what we're dealing with today, I really feel like this is paranormal. I do. It's just there's little to no evidence proving that it was done by a human. Straightforward. What do you think, Lip? Tell me all about it. Tell me what you think about it. I think this was either somebody, maybe dude was sleepwalking and typing on a computer, manifesting his own reality, or it's paranormal. We have many cases that deal with time slips, and who's to say this isn't one of those? I feel like this is paranormal. I really do. So I'm gonna say this is really paranormal.
It's just so weird, I don't know what to think about it, TBH.
It is strange. It is really strange. So if it were today, you would think you were being hacked. Somebody has a remote connection to your computer. Today it makes sense. But in 1984, with no modem, it doesn't make sense. there's no way, unless this guy was hoaxing it himself, which I don't think he was, because the Society for Psychical Research was involved, and they are really good about crossing their T's and dotting their I's. I don't think that he was doing it himself, unless he was sleepwalk typing. But he would have to be like a programming genius to, oh, tomorrow I'm going to ask about this, but give it 38 minutes after the computer boots before sending the message. And then he would have to like time himself and make sure it turns out just right. But then SPR inspected the computer and saw nothing weird. So I think we are looking at a legitimate case, something truly paranormal here. And why this isn't more popular, I don't know. So, there we go, using the S word again. Geez, I probably said it like 6 times. So, paranormal. There's your drink. Fantastic episode. I'm really jazzed with how this turned out. I'm very happy with how this all worked out. I really am. Lots of research went into this, and I'm thankful for my scriptwriter. I don't want to throw a name out there because they don't want to know, or they don't want people to know about their script writing and don't want to be brought into it. I'm looking now to see if we have anybody to raid. I don't know that we do. Whoa! Don't want my own voice. I hate the sound of my voice. Well, we don't have too many people streaming. Nobody that I know personally. Let me look. All right, well, nobody worth rating. Sorry. We're going to leave it there. Next week, we're probably going to go with... let's see. I think we're looking at a cryptid next week. No, we did a cryptid week before last. All right, so we're due for a ghost. So we did high strangeness. So ghost is next, then cryptid. What do you make of?
We got the UAP hearing on Tuesday. You gonna watch?
Ooh, yeah. If I can, if it's during work hours, I'll at least listen. Yeah, we might talk about that a little bit. Let me write that down. UAP hearing Tuesday. Is that for you locally, or is that for U.S.? I'm sure that's U.S. What's today? 7. So 8, 9.
Yeah, it's Luna's Secrecy Task Force 1 in the house.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'll listen to it if I can. And we'll probably talk about it next week a little bit. But we'll do a ghost story next week. see what we can come up with, something good, something riveting, and we'll touch on the UAP stuff. So cool. Thanks everybody for listening tonight. Thank you, Lip, as always, for being here. This podcast wouldn't function without you. I appreciate every second that you're here. Thank you. I say again, if you've got a story that you want to tell me and we will read it on the podcast, we will talk about it. You can email us at beyondshadowspodcast@gmail.com.
As always.
Thank you so much. And if you're listening to this podcast now and you're still here 2 hours into it, hit that like and subscribe button, comment down below. It helps us out so much. The numbers game is a big thing when it comes to podcasters. We are nobody podcasters here. Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks everybody that's listened to this point. Thank you, Lip, again. Glad you're here. So we will pick up next week with a ghost story. We'll do something ghost related. I'm not sure what yet, but we'll come up with something. I always do. Great show tonight. I appreciate you being here, Lip. It was a good show. I felt good tonight. I had a good day, so today turned out pretty good. Get you some sleep, Lip. I'm gonna get on out of here, and we'll catch everybody next week. Thanks everyone for being here.
hauntings.hue and and index equals 14. Good night. Ghost sounds good. Have a nice week, bud.
What was this? Do I want to click on this link? Do I want to see what it is? Critical mass. What is this? I do? What is this?
100% you do.
I do? Stranger, tell me about your link that you posted. You just spammed my podcast. Tell me about it. Tell us about it. We're here at this point. Tell us about it. You're here. You're involved. We want to know.
My link that I posted.
Yes. 3 subscribers to your channel, friend. What is this all about? The critical mass.
It's the audiobook I am working on for 4 months now.
What is your audiobook about? Tell us. Tell us now. We demand it. I'm looking. I'm seeing it now.
Conspiracy theory sci-fi. I guess.
Protocol. Bright lights, white rooms.
Short story for now.
Antiseptic. They asked their questions but never listened to the answers. The tower
Novel
told me
in
what
the
to
future.
say, how to nod, when to smile. I followed his instructions exactly, and they stamped the papers, waved me through.
Okay.
We are a team now.
I'll listen. But only if you come back.
MSRY called you ending the stream.
No, you're good. You're good. I'll listen. I'm all about conspiracy theory. Cool. You know,
But I'm glad you didn't shun me.
No. It's cool. I get it. I am not a huge podcaster. Well, thank you for the follow. Golly, that's an old animation. My hair was very, very short then. So, it's fine. We're not going to, if you're not, you don't have to spam us like that, but you can come in and talk about it, and we'll post your link in there. It ain't no big deal. Talk to the people before you drop your links, yo. But hey, it's cool. I'll check it out. I'll give you a subscribe right now. I'll listen to it while I'm at work. You ain't gonna be pushy about it. Be cool about it, friend. Be cool. Be cool, friend. We're fighting the good fight. I appreciate the follow. Appreciate it. I do. Welcome to Beyond the Shadows podcast. We talk about everything. We talk about everything. And if this is noteworthy, I'll listen to it through the week, and we'll see what it's all about, and we might talk about it next week. Who knows? But I appreciate you being here. Thanks, friend. Thanks for coming in. I appreciate it. But no, we're gonna. Yeah, you're right. We came in right at the end of it here. We finished the last of our drinks. We cut our case, but hey, your link's in there. It's in the podcast now, and it's going to get posted to YouTube later. So my little minuscule numbers on YouTube is going to hear your link at least. So, I might drop that link in the description of this week's episode. See what happens. I can't promise anything. I've got little to no numbers, but thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Yeah, we're gonna get on out of here, friends. We'll see everybody next week, and we're gonna talk about some ghosts.
From minuscule to minuscule.
That's right. That's right. Treat each other, don't beat each other.
Have a good rest of the night.
All right. I hope to see y'all next week. We're gonna talk about some ghosts. Y'all have a good night. We're gonna get on out of here. Thanks everyone for showing up tonight. Have a good night.
A creature like that, how would it ever die?
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs.
Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him.
Oh, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. It's horrible. Look like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.
Feel the shadows.